You don't really think you'll win, do you? Things change.
Hey everyone, and welcome to my next video. I'm the Miserable Movie Man, and this video is about why I love Batman Returns so much. Now, this film gets quite a lot of flack from many people. I think some people don't really find it to be a good representation of Batman. Some people find it to be too much of a Tim Burton movie, and I'll get into some of those points in the video. But I love Batman Returns. It is my favorite Batman film of all time by far, and I want to talk a little bit today about why I think that's the case. Give 5 pretty comprehensive reasons why I like Batman Returns so much. I've got to say that I didn't love it that much at first. When I was a kid and I watched it as a teenager, I thought, yeah, this is not really the Penguin or the Catwoman that I know too much in the comics, and maybe it's not quite as good as 89.
Let me tell you about this guy I know, Jack. Mean kid, bad seed, hurt people.
I like him already.
But as the years have gone by and as I've got a bit older, I've come to appreciate that film for what it is. And that film, to me, is a masterpiece of filmmaking. Not just from a filming perspective, but also from the character perspective. So let's get onto it. Here are 5 reasons why I absolutely love Batman Returns, and I think it's the best Batman film to date, bar none. The first reason I want to give are the performances. This film has an incredible cast. Not to say that there wasn't a great cast in Batman 89 with Nicholson and Michael Keaton, but I mean, in this film you have Michael Keaton returning as Batman, you have Danny DeVito as the Penguin, you have Michelle Pfeiffer in, I think, her best on-screen role ever as Catwoman, and you have Christopher Walken as Max Schreck. I mean, what more could you ask for in a film? I honestly think that DeVito's performance deserved an Oscar. He was unrecognizable as himself when he was playing the Penguin. So much so that when he was in the Penguin makeup for one of the scenes where he tries to get a note from the monkey that's the pet of the organ grinder, the monkey was so scared and terrified of him in the Penguin makeup that he took like 28 takes or something for the monkey to hand him the note.
Did you miss me?
Great speech, Oswald.
My name is not Oswald. It's Penguin. I am not a human being. I am an animal. Cold-blooded. Crank the AC. Where are my lists? Bring me the name. So just DeVito's performance alone, as vicious and scary as he was as Oswald Cobblepot, I think was unbelievable. He really should have won an Oscar for that, in my opinion. And likewise, I think the same can be said for Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. She delivers the most stunning performance I've seen, just immerses herself into that role. Just out of interest, DeVito, I think, has said that playing the Penguin was his favorite role and probably the one kids remember him the most by. And for Michelle Pfeiffer, she wasn't clearly, an immediate choice, I think, for the character. I think Annette Bening had been cast for a while and she broke her leg, and Sean Young was campaigning by parading around the studios in a Catwoman outfit trying to hunt down Tim Burton.
For the director of Batman 2. How dare you not make time to see the Catwoman, not even so much as granting me a meeting?
And Michelle Pfeiffer initially, Michael Keaton had reservations because he actually dated both his leading co-stars in the films. He had a relationship with Kim Basinger and he had a relationship with Michelle Pfeiffer, but that was in the past, and thankfully he gave the green light to have her come on board as Catwoman. And what a powerhouse performance she puts in, just portraying the meek and mild-mannered and oppressed Selina at the start of the movie, and then turning into this amazing sort of creature of the night, force of nature as Catwoman. Her performance was, I think, incredible. Just the depth she gives to that role is stunning for me.
I'm no cat. I'm just an assistant. A secretary. I don't know about you, Miss Kitty, but I feel so much yummier. Why are you doing this?
I'm sure you have a lot of problems with your boss, but I mean, who the hell do you think you are?
I don't know anymore, Bruce.
And of course, Michael Keaton as Batman. Many fans are clamoring that he didn't do as much in this film, or he wasn't as good as Batman in this film. I disagree. I think he was better as Batman and Bruce in this film, and Keaton gives another great layered performances. There are just so many instances where he gives a look or a turn or a nod or maybe a comment that just adds a lot more to his performance from the first one.
My kiss can be even deadly.
And then you got Christopher Walken being Christopher Walken. Who doesn't want Christopher Walken in a film? Especially as this character, Max Schreck, says that he's not Santa Claus, he's just some poor schmo, got lucky. But you can tell that he's really relishing this role.
Women. Nothing surprises me, Chip. Except your late mother. Who'd have thought Selina had a brain to damage? Bottom line, she tries to blackmail me. I'll drop her out a higher window. Meantime, I got better fish to fry.
So, really loved the performances in this film. The second reason I want to give are the characters. So I talked a bit about the performances, how I thought they're amazing. Just the characters alone make this film, I think, one of the best Batman film. In terms of watchability on the screen, you can say that there was a lot for Heath in Dark Knight, and Bane was an interesting character. But if you look at the two villains, and this was the first time they had the two villains, which actually Tim Burton didn't want to do. He wanted one villain, but the studio insisted on another. And the initial plot and script by Sam Hamm didn't really give the film the kind of impact that I think it has to this day. The original plot was them looking for some kind of buried treasure under Gotham City. But I mean, just looking at the characters themselves. So Oswald as a forlorn, disposed, abandoned child from the upper class. He's a bit different as a kid, as he says. He gets dumped in a sewer and ends up in the Arctic World exhibit in the zoo, which, by the way, is my assumption as to how he was raised. I'm guessing a kindly old penguin caretaker found him, raised him there. He bonded very much with the penguins, then joined the Red Triangle Gang and the circus, and they grew up that way. But the character of the penguin, I thought, was a brilliant reinvention of the character. In the comics at that point, he hadn't had much to him. He was a child whose mother was always worried for him, and he gave him a lot of umbrellas to keep him out of the sunlight so that he wouldn't, sunburn. And he had umbrella-themed motifs, and he had a long nose, and he squawked a bit. That was really it. So, what Tim Burton did, which was wonderful, was he tried to ground the character in a way that made him relatable to audiences. He researched conditions like syndactyly, which is where your fingers are sort of fused together on birth to try and give them the appearance more of a flipper. He came up with the backstory of an abandoned socialite where they make the point that he could have been Bruce's friend at prep school had he not been abandoned. So all of the influences that you see in the film that lead to the Penguin being the way he is, just how vicious and evil he is, how much he hates society, how much he needs his revenge. I mean, all of those things I think make for a really interesting character. And you can see it in DeVito's portrayal. He really is enjoying what he gets to do with the character.
What do you want? Right now, my troops are fanning out across town for your children. Yes, for your firstborn sons. The ones you left defenseless at home so you could dress up like jerks, get juiced, and dance badly.
And then let's go on to Selina Kyle's Catwoman. Just amazing character. She goes through this psychotic break. She doesn't die. She's not supernatural. If you read the graphic novel, it explains much better the injuries. There's a bit of a cop-out with the fact that Max is a poor shot at the end. If you do watch the film very closely, you can see that he doesn't really hit the vital organs when he's shooting her. But she transforms into this, force of pure rage, of just reckless abandonment, giving into her desires, just giving into her nature, doing what she wants. I think that was the biggest thing in terms of a character change. The Penguin has been abandoned and been sort of left to his own devices. He hasn't really had the love and the nurture that he should have had growing up, and it's turned him into this vicious, revenge-obsessed person. And Selina has that switch after she falls through the 4 or 5 awnings and hits the snow, and wakes up with somebody that doesn't care. She doesn't care anymore. She'll say what she wants, she'll do what she wants, she'll go out, have fun. She'll take out her, sort of angst and anger on folks as well, and just cause a bit of havoc and mayhem, just being a force of nature.
Meow.
So the motivations for both of those characters are there, and it's really, really great to see. I think it's one of those things where Burton took established comic characters and gave them, elements that we still see to this day. The animated series version of Penguin was largely based on returns, and also Oswald being a master strategist. He wasn't so much of a strategist in the comics, but in this film, he's portrayed as somebody that can always come up with a plan. The guy that runs the gang, the guy that comes up with the scheme and can anticipate things and is smarter than many people. So
A plan is forming.
that was a wonderful element to see, and Catwoman with her sort of unbridled rage and just giving into her base instincts. Those are also elements that have been played out in the subsequent incarnations. So I think Burton really gave a lot to both those characters. And then Shrek, which, is one of those characters who you think, well, he starts off as a corporate businessman, ruthless, but then you start to find out more about him, and you realize that he's the master manipulator. He's the one behind a lot of these things. He kills Selina without a whim. He seems to have very little moral code, but the more the film goes on, you find out that he's doing it for his son, and so to him the ends justify the means. He wants to leave a legacy in an empire where he can't be forgotten, and he's set his son up for life.
How can you be so mean to someone so meaningless?
This power plant is my legacy. It's what I leave behind for Chip. Nothing must prevent that.
So all three of the characters, all of them had really interesting elements to them. And a more important note, all of them were dark reflections of Bruce. I think that's a huge thing for me. They were all a dark reflection of what Bruce could have been had his life turned out a bit different. So, you know, had he not had the love and upbringing from his parents, he could have turned into Oswald. Had he not had the self-restraint and moral code, he could have turned into Selina. And he could have been a corporate tycoon that just preys upon the helpless. So all three of the villains in this film are dark reflections of Bruce, and I think that the aspect is truly wonderful. At the end, you know, when Selina is trying to figure out who she is, and she's trying to come to the realization of reconciling the two sides of her, it's good to see that, you know, she goes through that process and she sees where Bruce is at, which is different to where she's at. And Oswald as well. I mean, he fights against different sides of himself. At one point he comes up with his plan, and his grand plan involves kidnapping the kids, but then he gets sidetracked and tries to become respectable. He thinks he has a hope at fitting back into society, but when that gets dashed, he reverts to his true animalistic nature. And I think that the Penguin, for me, was more evil than the Joker. The Joker is evil, certainly, and crazy, and likes to kill a lot of people. And he'll kill people on a whim. But the Penguin has viciousness to him that, sort of very animalistic viciousness to him, that I think puts him at another level than the Joker.
Just like I was, and like me, a terrible fate waits for them. Tonight, while their parents party, they'll be dreaming away in their safe cribs, their soft beds, and we will snatch them, carry them into the sewer, and toss them into a deep, dark, watery grave.
Penguin? I mean, killing sleeping children, isn't that a little,
No, it's a lie.
So there's an evilness to the Penguin and a sort of diabolicalness to him that I think puts him at a more scary and vicious villain than the Joker. So what Burton created, this, as Alfred calls it, a grotesque, I think was just a triumph in the film. And of course, with Burton, all of these characters have, you know, been misunderstood in some ways and been slighted by society in other ways. So he does have his traditional aspects in it. The third thing that I want to mention is the script. Maybe some people don't enjoy the script. I think this is one of the best scripts on film that I've seen. There are so many good lines, so many quotable lines, so many nice little touches here and there, so many instances where things go full circle. I love the exchange between Batman and the Penguin.
You're not the mayor.
Things change.
What do you want?
Ah, the direct approach. I admire that in a man with a mask.
I love the way that Selina talks to herself, and then the way she switches when she becomes Catwoman. I love the fact that her and Bruce have this electrifying relationship, and there's a real great back and forth there. Even love the lines that Shrek comes up with, saying, you know, how 3% growth is a mild swelling, and he makes fun of Bruce at the costume ball.
Ingenious costume. Let me guess. Trust fund, goody-goody.
which, by the way, is another amazing scene. They go to the costume ball, and Bruce and Selina go as themselves. Clearly, the human versions of themselves, the non-vigilante versions of themselves, are the masks they're wearing. So Bruce is the mask, Batman is the real him, and the same goes for Selina. So that visualization and interplay of opposites, I thought, worked amazingly in the film. And also that was helped by the script and the interactions they had at the ball. So the script for me, Daniel Waters who wrote Heathers, was so sharp and so satirical. There were lines in there where Bruce addresses the fact that Alfred let Vicky in the Batcave. There are lines in there where, you know, Bruce is being honest and sincere about his feelings towards the Penguin. There are lines in there where, you know, he just looks at the camera and says,
Yeah.
it's got such a range of elements to it, but they all seem to work really, really well and get woven into this synergy that I think is wonderful to hear on screen. The fourth reason, and I think these reasons are really in no particular order, is Batman himself. I love Batman in this film. I love Bruce and Batman in this film. I think a lot of accusations are made that Batman is a secondary character in this film. You don't see him till halfway into it. This is actually not true. There have been some folks on the internet who've had a lot of time on their hands, and they've measured the screen time of Batman in all the films up to Dark Knight Rises. And surprise, surprise, Batman has the second most screen time in Batman Returns. So if you actually want to know the percentages, you can look them up online. But in Batman Returns, he only has 3 minutes less screen time than he had in 89. So in 89, he had 22%. In Returns, he had 19% of total screen time over the film. In Batman Begins, it was only 17%. In The Dark Knight, it was 18%. And in The Dark Knight Rises, it was 13%. So the accusation that Batman doesn't have as much screen time in Returns is false. Just, if you really want to do it yourself, go and, you know, timer all of the appearances in the films. But going back to the character of Batman in this film, I really, really love the character progression. There's actual development for Bruce between 89 and Returns. In Returns, he's basically become so obsessed with his mission that he doesn't do anything else. He sits there in the dark, waiting for the signal. And yes, it gives us the most iconic, in my opinion, the most iconic scene in any of the Batman films. By the way, for all those folks who are saying, is no one going to figure out that he's Batman with those giant bat reflectors around the Wayne Manor? Well, no, because you can't see what they look like during the day. They're opaque, so you wouldn't really see the symbol on them. But when he stands up, you can see that Bruce has nothing to do in his life right now other than be Batman and fight crime. And that loneliness has increased since the first film, which I think is amazing, you know, from a character progression perspective. Also, his crime fighting bleeds into his daytime persona as Bruce Wayne. So it's not just at nighttime when he's fighting criminals. You know, when he has meetings with Max, he's opposing his power plant idea. He's trying to fight for the right things during the day as well.
I commissioned this report. I thought you might want to take a look at it. Point is, Max, Gotham City has a power surplus. I'm sure you know that. My question is, what's your angle?
Power surplus, Bruce. Shame on you. No such thing. One can never have too much power. If my life has a meaning, that's the meaning.
Yeah, well, I'm going to fight you on this, and I've already spoken to the mayor.
and we see eye to eye.
So the whole obsession with fighting crime and trying to save Gotham has taken over his life to the point where, you know, Bruce and Batman are pretty much doing the same thing. And we didn't see that much of that in 89. 89, he was still kind of becoming Batman. So again, progression there. Also, I love the fact in Returns, he's a much more skilled and confident fighter than he is in 89. In 89, he was building up his legend and his myth, and so there were times where he might struggle against a villain or a henchman, and there were times where, you know, he might get knocked down. Some of it was to create a mystique, some of it was potentially because he was early on in his career. In this film, he waltzes through people, just taking them out. You just watch him as he comes into Gotham Plaza, takes out the Red Triangle Gang, or the Circus Gang as they're also called. Both times he just, you know, walks around knocking people out.
Yeah, go ahead and hit me.
And we have that amazing scene where, you know, up to that point, you hadn't seen anything like from Batman being incredibly smart. So when Selina's being held, you know, he shoots the dart, grapple, and they say you missed. And in the cinema, you're thinking, did Batman miss? What's going on? And then, of course, he pulls the wall out from behind him and knocks him out anyway. So there's loads of touches of that, of Bruce being a much more skilled and resourceful fighter than he was in 89. Just goes around kicking butt, which I loved. I also like the fact that in Returns he talks with Alfred about a few things. You know, he mentions that Alfred let Vicky in the Batcave. You know, he talks to Selina about his past relationship, and she, you know, sort of jokingly says, "Yeah, I'm sure you didn't tell her things." And you'd think from a Batman film he's going to say, no, I didn't tell her things, I kept things from her. But no, he says, no, I told her everything.
Well, there are two truths. You know, and she had trouble reconciling them because I had trouble reconciling them.
Yeah.
Just touches like that. There are a lot of scenes in Returns, I think, that give insight into his character. Just small things that he says or that he does. So there's a scene where he's in pain or not, and he's sitting there. He says, not really, after he's got the thimble stuck in him from Catwoman. The scene for Vichyssoise, which I think is a wonderful scene because it's comedic and insightful at the same time. It's funny when he spits out the soup and says it's cold, and then Alfred tells him it's supposed to be cold. So Bruce just keeps eating. He doesn't even think. He's not somebody that cares about food. He just cares about his mission. Food is a fuel, and he just can't stop on his mission. So whatever Alfred puts in front of him, he's just going to eat blindly because he needs to go to work. And then the scene where he's trying to get the Batmobile to go into the Bat Rocket mode, and the switch doesn't work. And for 1 second, you just get the sense of Batman's world when he's hurtling towards his potential death. The switch doesn't work, and he says,
It's funny.
So the second time he tries, doesn't work. Then he says, okay, now I'm worried. So being in that situation, life and death all the time, he seems to have a dark sense of humor and irony about it. Finds things funny that other people would find hugely scary and frightening, terrifying. So these little glimpses into his character, working on the Batmobile, I think is wonderful to see in Returns, and the film doesn't get enough credit for that, in my opinion. So really enjoyed the Batman character in Returns. The final point I want to make, and trust me, there are loads of others I could have made. This video is already going on fairly long, and maybe I'll do a second video about other elements about why I love Returns, but I want to get the fifth point out there and leave it at that for now. The atmosphere of this film is stunning for me. This film is the one that most feels like a comic book. It feels like a fairy tale, a dark fairy tale, and a world where Batman and Penguin and Catwoman could exist.
I saw her first. Gotta fly.
One of the issues I have with Nolan's films is they're too hyper-realistic. You know, you wouldn't get a Bane or a Joker type character in the way that they've tried to make Batman a real-life character. But in Burton's films, you could absolutely see a Penguin or a Catwoman or others, maybe a Two-Face if they were able to do the next film, which is a shame, coming to pass. So the atmosphere is just magical for me. It's a beautiful setting at Christmas time. Yeah, some of the sets are looking like they could be a bit obviously built or ropey or being done on a soundstage. I think some of that gives it a charm though. It looks like a Christmas fairy tale. It gives it the sense that it could be done as a play. It gives it a very claustrophobic atmosphere that adds to the tension of the film, I think. So the atmosphere of the film for me is amazing. You've got the iconic scenes of the Batmobile driving through the snow. I love the scene where the Penguin just flies up into the air on his umbrella. I think the score by Danny Elfman, and also with the Face-to-Face song for the Masquerade Ball, are amazing as well, and just give this film such a wonderful feeling and vibe to it. I have to say, I have to watch it every Christmas. When it's cold and dark outside, I watch this film with the lights low, and it is a truly magical experience for me every time. One that I wouldn't get by watching the stark and sometimes bright Nolan films. Batman to me operates in the shadows, and a lot of this film is set in the shadows or at Christmas time. And you know, interestingly enough, they filmed it in summer. I think it was even it might be even released in summer. I have to double check. But it's got a Christmas setting, so I highly recommend people watch it at Christmas. The film is just a beautiful, dark, gothic fairy tale brought to life. So that's it. A fairly long video for this one, but Batman Returns is a real passion of mine. I will always defend the film to the hilt to anyone that tries to say to me that it's not a great film, not a great Batman film, too much of a Tim Burton film. I disagree with all those things. Clearly, everyone should have their own opinion, and people can enjoy different things, but for me, at least, Batman Returns is the best Batman film to date. It edges 89 just due to the fact of the script and the characters and the performances by some of these heavyweight actors. So there you have it. Those are the reasons I love the film so much, and also hopefully you found the video interesting. If you agree, disagree, please let me know. If you like the video, then please drop me a like and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be doing more of these. Obviously you can see I've got plenty to talk about. I'm not shy of expressing an opinion. And if there's any other films that you'd like me to give a comment or a review of, then yeah, just let me know and I'll see if I can do that for my next video. So thanks again for watching, and have a great day.